The mountains didn't echo gunfire here. They swallowed it. Mist clung to the ridgelines like a living thing, curling through pine trees and broken rock, muffling sound and hiding movement. Somewhere inside that silence, an entire enemy company, over 100 armed fighters, was advancing through a narrow valley, confident, loud, careless. They believed the ridge was empty. They were wrong. High above them, prone against cold stone, lay Captain Maravas, call sign Ghost 13, the most lethal sniper the unit had ever produced. Officially, she didn't exist. Unofficially, commanders measured success by whether Ghost 13 had been deployed. She hadn't spoken into her comms in 27 minutes. That alone made command uneasy. Mara adjusted her breathing, the rifle an extension of her body. Wind speed, negligible. Distance, 1,180 meters to the lead element. Visibility, poor, for them. Her finger rested lightly against the trigger. She didn't fire. Not yet. She was counting. The enemy company moved like every poorly trained force did. Tight clusters, overlapping chatter, confidence fueled by numbers instead of discipline. They had armored vehicles, heavy machine guns, and drones buzzing lazily overhead. They believed this valley was uncontested, Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. They never learn. Her mission parameters have been simple. Recon only. Mark targets. Withdraw. That was before everything went sideways. An hour earlier, her extraction bird had taken a direct hit from a shoulder-fired missile. She'd jumped clear, parachute shredding on tree branches, slamming in a mountainside hard enough to crack 2 ribs and dislocate a shoulder. She had reset herself. Then she watched the helicopter explode. Command went silent immediately after. Jammed. She was alone. Mara slowly rotated her scope, tracking the enemy's command element. Officers first. Radio operators. Drone controllers. She cataloged faces, movements, habits that a chessboard formed in her mind. Point one company. One snipered. A faint smile touched her lips. Fair enough. She shifted backward, melting into shadow, leaving behind a false firing position rigged with thermal decoys and heat tape. When the first drone swept the ridge minutes later, it hovered exactly where she wanted it to. The drone paused, then exploded midair. The valley erupted in shouting. Mara was already gone. The first shot came from the east. IT took the enemy company a full 3 seconds to realize their forward commander had no head anymore. Panic rippled outward. Soldiers scattered, weapons firing blindly into fog and trees. The second shot dropped a radio operator before he could scream. The third disabled a machine gunner mid-burst, his weapon chewing into dirt as his body collapsed. Still, no one saw her. They fired everywhere except where she was. Mara had moved again. She never fired twice from the same position. Not once in her career. Every shot was followed by displacement, sometimes 10 meters, sometimes 50, sometimes straight down a sheer cliff face using nothing but rope and muscle. The mountains became her ally. She used echoes to confuse direction, timed shots with thunder rolling overhead, and fired only when chaos masked the sound. Within 10 minutes, 17 enemy soldiers were down. Command tried to re-establish order. Mara decided to end that. She waited until the replacement commander stood, shouting orders. Pointing toward the wrong ridge, point one breath, point one squeeze. The man collapsed backward, binoculars shattering against his face. Silence followed. Then screaming, they launched drones again. More this time, faster, hunting for thermal signatures. Mara switched tactics. She pulled a thermal blanket over herself and slid into a shallow stream cutting through the rocks, submerging everything but her rifle barrel. Ice-cold water stole her breath, but she didn't flinch. The drones passed overhead, blind. From the water, she fired. Shot after shot, precision, merciless. By the time the drones retreated, 28 more bodies littered the valley floor. The enemy company had stopped advancing. They were now trapped, and they knew it. Back at the forward operating base, officers crowded around flickering screens. Still no contact with Ghost 13? The colonel asked. No, sir. She was never meant to engage. She didn't. Another officer replied quietly. She's dismantling them. Satellite imagery updated. Red dots vanished one by one. The room went silent. "That's an entire company," someone whispered. The colonel folded his arms. "She's buying us time." "No, sir," the intelligence officer said, zooming in. "She's not delaying them." He swallowed. "She's eliminating them." Night fell hard in the mountains. Mara welcomed it. Darkness was her natural state. She rigged trip mines and likely pursuit routes, redirected enemy patrols into choke points, and picked them apart with brutal efficiency. When ammunition ran low, she switched to suppressed sidearm work, close, silent, personal. T1 point. 3 enemy soldiers stumbled in her hide sight. She killed all 3 without firing a shot. Knife. Elbow. Broken neck. Their bodies never hit the ground. She dragged them into the shadows and vanished again. Fear took hold now. The enemy began shooting at shapes that weren't there, radios crackling with panicked voices. "She's everywhere. There's more than one. We're being hunted." Mara listened from above, calm, focused. Good, she thought. Let the story grow. By dawn, over half the company was gone. The survivors huddled together, backs to rocks, eyes hollow, fingers trembling on triggers. They didn't sleep. Mara did. For 23 minutes. That was enough. As the sun rose, she made her final move. She climbed higher than she ever should have with injured ribs, dragging her rifle up a near-vertical face to a position no one would expect. From there, she saw everything point one by one. She ended it in a rush, in a wasted motion. When the last enemy fighter dropped his weapon and ran, she didn't shoot him in the back. She waited. He ran straight into a mine. The valley fell silent, completely. Mara exhaled slowly, letting the rifle rest. Mission clock. 46 hours since insertion. Enemy casualties. Total annihilation. Friendly losses. 1 helicopter point, 1 sniper. Still breathing. Her comm crackled faintly. "Ghost 13. Do you copy?" She pressed the transmit button. "Copy," she said calmly. "Area clear." Back at base, men who had commanded battalions sat down heavily, stunned. The colonel closed his eyes. "Extraction team inbound," he said. "Bring her home." Mara leaned back against the rock, finally allowing herself a small, tired smile. They didn't debrief Mara Voss immediately. They couldn't. When the extraction team reached the valley, even hardened operators moved slowly, weapons raised, eyes scanning the ridgelines as if expecting the mountains themselves to rise up and attack them. Bodies lay everywhere, some clustered, some isolated, some slumped against rocks with expressions frozen between confusion and terror. There were no signs of a firefight, and defensive lines, and last stand. It looked less like a battle and more like a judgment. Mara sat on a flat stone near the landing zone, rifle across her lap, face streaked with dirt and dried blood that wasn't hers. Her breathing was steady. Her eyes were not. She watched the medics approach as if they were strangers in a foreign land. "Captain Voss," one asked carefully. She nodded once. "You're safe now." Mara didn't answer. Safe was a word she no longer trusted. Back at base, the intelligence room filled again, but this time with people who had no intention of speaking. Screens displayed satellite images, drone footage, and ground-level helmet cam from the extraction team. Analysts replayed moments again and again, trying to understand how one woman had done what entire units failed to accomplish. Company strength confirmed at 112, an analyst finally said. "All neutralized." "Ow," someone asked. The analyst swallowed. "Systematically." The colonel stared at the screen where Mara's thermal outline appeared and vanished dozens of times across the terrain. She turned terrain into a weapon. "No, sir," the intelligence officer replied quietly. She turned herself into the terrain. That night, word leaked, not officially, not in reports, but soldiers talk, and soldiers exaggerate. Morning, the story had already changed. She wasn't just a sniper anymore. She was a ghost that hunted in silence. She was death with patience. She was something the enemy had no name for. Mara lay in the infirmary, staring at the ceiling while doctors spoke in low voices around her. Ribs fractured. Shoulder dislocated, but reset cleanly. Hypothermia symptoms. Severe dehydration. And psychologically? Another asked. The first doctor hesitated. She's calm. Too calm. Mara closed her eyes, but the valley followed her. Every shadow, every movement, every breath before a trigger squeeze replayed in perfect clarity. She didn't regret it. What unsettled her was how natural it had felt. Command cleared the room, and the colonel entered alone. He didn't sit. He didn't speak at first. When he finally did, his voice was quieter than Mara expected. You were ordered to observe and withdraw. Yes, sir. You didn't. No, sir. Why? Mara turned her head slowly, meeting his eyes. Because withdrawal meant they would move on our base by dawn. Because no one else could reach them in time. Because I was already there. The colonel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. You saved lives. She said nothing. You eliminated a full enemy company alone. Still nothing. The colonel exhaled. The problem, Captain, is that now everyone knows. 2 weeks later, the enemy responded. Not with soldiers, with fear. They changed routes. Abandoned valleys. Refused to move at night. Patrols doubled, then tripled, then stopped altogether in regions rumored to be hers. Intercepted communications revealed a new standing order. If Ghost 13 is suspected in an area, withdraw immediately. NO confirmation required. NO engagement authorized. Mara became a myth faster than command could suppress it, and myths don't stay controlled. Political pressure mounted. Allies wanted her deployed everywhere. Enemies demanded proof she was real or dead. High Command argued whether she was a strategic asset or a destabilizing legend. Mara didn't care. She trained. Harder than before. If the world was going to hunt her name, she would make sure it never caught her. Her next mission came quietly, in no ceremony. No audience at a black folder slid across a table. Hostage extraction went bad, the colonel said. Unit wiped out. Survivors taken into a fortified city. Mara opened the folder. Satellite images. Streets. Rooftops. Sniper nests. How many hostiles? She asked. Unknown. Hundreds. She looked up. You're not sending a team. No, just me. Yes. Mara closed the folder. When? Already late. She stood. The colonel hesitated. Mara, if this goes wrong, it won't. That wasn't arrogance, that IT was certainty. The city was worse than the mountains. Too many angles. Too much noise. Too many eyes. Mara moved anyway. She entered through sewage tunnels, emerged beneath a collapsed building, and climbed 6 stories using exposed rebar and patience. She watched the enemy for hours before acting, learning patterns, memorizing rhythms. She eliminated lookouts first, silently. Then generators. Darkness fell. Panic followed. From that moment on, the city bled slowly, 0.1 rooftop at a time, 0.1 corridor at a time. The hostages never saw her clearly. They only heard suppressed shots, felt locks open, and followed whispered instructions delivered from shadows. When extraction helicopters finally arrived, the landing zone was clear. Too clear. Command asked for a casualty count. That Mara's reply was short. All threats neutralized. Back at base, someone finally said it aloud. She's unstoppable. Mara heard about that comment later, that IT bothered her more than fear ever could. Because unstoppable things don't get to stop. The world kept calling. Missions stacked up. Jungles. Deserts. Snowfields. Everywhere Ghost 13 went, enemy formations collapsed before contact. She never missed. She never stayed. And she never aged in the stories. But in reality, exhaustion crept in. Her hands shook sometimes before missions. Sleep came less often. Faces blurred together. The line between necessity and instinct thinned. Until the night, it almost broke her. The ambush was perfect, too perfect. She spotted its seconds before it triggered. Enough time to dive, not enough to escape. The explosion threw her. Through a wall. When she woke, her rifle was gone. Her comms were crushed, and voices surrounded her. She had finally been caught. They bound her, blindfolded her, dragged her through streets while shouting triumphantly. The ghost bleeds. She's real. She's ours. Mara stayed silent. She didn't struggle. She didn't panic. She counted steps, turns, voices, When they finally removed the blindfold, she was in a courtyard, surrounded by armed men, cameras rolling that a commander stepped forward. Any last words? Mara looked at him calmly. Yes. She smiled faintly. You should have killed me. The lights went out. Gunfire erupted from rooftops. Precision, chaos. Her unit had never stopped tracking her. They moved faster than the enemy expected, but what shocked them most was what happened next. Mara broke free, took a weapon, and joined the fight, side by side. When it was over, bodies filled the courtyard. The cameras were shattered. The myth had almost died. Instead, it evolved. Months later, Mara stood before a class of new recruits. She wore no medals and no insignia beyond rank. They knew who she was anyway. She looked at them, young, confident, unbroken. People will tell you stories, she said. About me. About this job. She paused. They'll make it sound glorious. Her gaze hardened. It isn't. Silence filled the room. If you want glory, leave now. No one moved. She nodded once. Good. Then listen carefully. Outside, a banner hung quietly.